want to follow that up with this particular question. Like I said, it's not going to be an interrogative section, rather a discussion. We'll come to the definition of as in tertiary education, which is very imperative. I want to find out, like, the kind of education we receive from the schooling is one which has become more about passing other than learning. So people go to school or tertiary institution, they find themselves in there, and then their sole aim is to pass. So you have them trying to memorize all these things just so they can pass. And then so it seems that the school has just become like a memory game, and then whoever can memorize the best succeeds or passes. I want to have your take, or can you share more light on this anomaly?
Yeah, that's a very important question also. I'm sure maybe somewhere in the course of the discussion we may touch more on that. But
yeah,
because you see that one of the points I'll be highlighting later in relation to the goal of education is its ability to completely transform and develop the human mind.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take the human mind, there are a lot of components, okay, of which the memory is just one of them. It turns out that the kind of formal education that we receive in most of these educational institutions is just one which is geared towards, to a large extent, developing the memory.
Mm-hmm.
The memory itself has three components. You have the short term, the medium term, and the long term. I'm afraid to say that the kind of education that they give us only targets the short term and maybe medium term memory, and not the long term memory. I'm sure that if I ask you, or maybe some of our viewers right now, if I ask you certain questions pertaining to things you learned in JHS or class 6, you can't remember.
Yeah.
That's problematic. So it means that you basically learned those things, memorized them because you wanted to write exams and then pass and go your way.
Yeah.
And that has been the case. And to some extent, you may not blame the students, because it turns out that if you really want to be different and maybe you want to really study and get understanding, you may not get the highest scores. The system may end up penalizing you by saying that, okay, you are not a good student. You may end up being an average student because you may be getting, certain low grades, while the people who memorize the notes,
yeah,
will be ahead of you. At the university or at the tertiary level, it's even worse. So there are institutions who evaluate students' performance using objective tests. So, for example, objective test is just a typical example of a mode of assessment, a mode of student assessment, which thrives on measuring students' ability to remember or recall things they've been taught. Mm-hmm. Okay, so obviously, if a student excels because of objective tests, and that student has an A, for example, mm-hmm, it doesn't show anything. As far as the industry is concerned, you may have a first class and come to the industry, and we will give you a practical problem to solve, and you may not be able to solve it. And that's a problem, and that's why this program is very important, because we're looking at an industry perspective.
Yeah.
Here, at this company, we have a lot of people, Trembit Consultant, we have a lot of people applying for jobs. And then somebody says, okay, I have first degree in computer science, or I have first degree in IT, or something like that. And you ask the person, okay, so what did you learn? What are some of your courses? So, I learned about maybe programming, I learned about maybe graphic design, web development, and all of that. And you may give them a simple task to develop maybe just a dummy website. They can't do that. Some of them say they learned about programming. They can't use just a single programming language to do anything. I think I've even been too advanced. Some of them cannot even manipulate Microsoft Word. They can't even use it to structure their own CVs properly. We've seen a lot of that, with a lot of typing errors and all of that. So you ask yourself, what did they learn in school? Who taught them? Who trained them? And so it turns out that when they come, companies who want to recruit them may have to incur additional costs to train them.
Yeah.
And if that's what we have to do, then the question is, what is the relevance of tertiary education?
Now, with that said, I just wanted to help us understand something right now. Can you help us understand what tertiary education is? Like, what is tertiary education?
Thank you. That's a good question. So, before I would define tertiary education, let me define education in general. Okay. Education in general is a process which intentionally transmit something which is considered to be valuable by society in an intelligent, voluntary manner. So we do it voluntarily. That means that even though you want to educate people, you can't force them to learn. Okay, otherwise it will be an infringement upon their human rights. Okay, so once you understand education through that lens, then you can actually look at three major characteristics of education. That number one, all forms of education involve a transmission process. Like I indicated before, so you could have, in this case, you have an instructor who is supposed to be the epitome or the repertoire of knowledge and information, who releases the information to the student. And then the student are also supposed to absorb it and assimilate it and all of that. Again, it is presumed that the knowledge and the information that is being received from the instructor is valuable. And then thirdly, the manner of transmission is also supposed to be acceptable. And we'll go into the details of all of that. Yeah. But what is tertiary education? Tertiary education is also known in the literature as third level education. It's also referred to as third stage or post-secondary education. Tertiary education is basically the education, the type of education that immediately follows the completion of secondary education. So when you move from secondary, that is senior high school, okay, the next level is called the tertiary level. That's where you have tertiary education, and that includes universities, that includes trade schools and colleges. All these institutions are tertiary institutions where you can obtain either an undergraduate or postgraduate degree, or you can obtain certificates, diplomas, and in general academic degrees. So that's tertiary education. By the time you are done with tertiary education, whether it is in the case of Ghana, whether it's from a technical university or from the traditional universities or from a private university or from a training college, whether an educational training college or a nursing training college, you're going to come out with some certificate, which is either going to be in the form of a diploma or a degree certificate. And then that's it. That's all you have to show, that okay, you've gone through tertiary education. So that's tertiary education. And okay, so I'll leave it there because I was going to digress a bit into something, but I'll leave it there so that we continue. Maybe if I have to talk about that later, I'll digress.
So, viewers, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Truth TV show, where evidence is the rule of the game. The Truth TV show, where we present to you nothing but the truth. So you can be rest assured that everything that you receive here is deeply rooted in proofs and evidences, and it will not speak presumptuously or will not speak not knowing the fact. We ensure that we have the fact right before we speak. Now, today's discussion, or the topic for today, like what you have been deliberating on, is gaps in Ghana's tertiary educational system and industry perspective. And we are fortunate to have the guest who is an industry person and also an educator, so that we can have a comprehensive discourse on this matter. So like I said earlier, the Truth TV show is sponsored by the Trembit Executive and Staff Training Institute, empowering leaders, strengthening institutions, transforming nations. Now it's about corporate training, and some of the programs include advanced postgraduate diplomas, professional diplomas and certificates in research method and data science, machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I'll be giving it to you bit by bit as we go on. Right. So Polymath, my next question is that it is actually very clear, because when you're defining tertiary institution, you highlighted the degrees, or no, you highlighted some of the things that are awarded to students, like degrees, diploma, and all that. And you have some people, I would say that it is conspicuous and blatantly evident that the motivation for most people attaining tertiary education has to do with maybe getting a degree, and then probably once they have the degree, it may increase their chance of getting a job. But if that is the case, should that be a right motivation enough.
No, that's a very wrong motivation, and I think that will naturally feed into what I was going to talk about. What are the objectives of higher education?
Yeah.
What should higher educations do? What should be their goal? What should be their purpose? And once that is clearly defined, then we can also appreciate what the motivation of students should be. Now, basically, the first objective of higher education is to instruct students to obtain the requisite skills that are suitable to make them effective in the industry. Okay, so from the perspective of a student, if you wanted to go for higher education, you should be thinking of going for something that will give you the right set of skills that will make you relevant after graduation.
Yeah.
Your goal should not just be to receive a cluster of papers called certificates and then put them. These days, some of the universities are learning from us, the business people. They want to be professional, so you see they brand it well. They will give you a nice case, for the certificate, and then they think they've done something. So you come for the job interview, you see some of the young guys holding some of these cases. You see the logos of the universities and institutions embossed in them and all of that. That means nothing to the industry person. At the end of the day, you come for the interview, we give you a practical task to perform, and you can do it. So students or people should not move into tertiary education just because of the certificate. They should move there because they think they are going to get the right kind of skill. But again, the question is whether the tertiary education that is given, actually equips students with this. No. And that's why we are doing this show. The fact on the ground is the tertiary educational institutions do not have what it takes to equip their students with the skills they need. And CEOs of companies are very much frustrated and worried about this issue. I think there's the CEO of this company, what's the name? Senyo Husi or something.
Dr. Senyo.
Yes. Made a remark about this issue, and then I think one of the University of Ghana or something, they came trying to rebut
when we're celebrating their 70 years.
Yes, paint that CEO in a bad light. But they should have taken the cues from that, because what that gentleman said is actually the case, and every other objective CEO will tell you that what Senor said was true. You understand that? And that today people would go to, for example, University of Ghana just because they want to go there, because they are done, and then maybe all their friends are going to school, they are going to university, so they'll be like, me too, have to have a university education. But the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of graduates from the University of Ghana, and KNUST, UCC. I don't even want to talk about Winneba. You understand that? Who are useless in the industry. That's the fact. And we need to. Why are they useless? They don't have the skill set that is required for them to succeed in the industry. You give them simple tasks pertaining to the courses on the faces of their own certificates and transcript they brought to you, and they can't do anything about it. They have no clue. This is pathetic. So that's the first point. Now, the second point is that the objective of higher education is to promote the general powers of the mind. It is obvious. Maybe I will go more into details later and show our viewers some things. We'll project some things on the screen. But if you talk about the powers of the mind, the faculties of the mind, it is obvious that the educational system has failed in that regard. Again, the ultimate goal of higher education is to stimulate the continual learning spirit in students. The average university graduate, hasn't bought a book and read it from cover to cover 20 years after they graduated. And if you find people going for, let's say, postgraduate education, like people pursuing master's degrees, it's because they probably think that when they do so, maybe they can get higher pay, or they could get promoted, or maybe when there's some opportunity somewhere, they will grab it. They are not pursuing the masters really because they want to be masters. You see, a master's degree is supposed to make you a master of the field. So if you say, I have a master's degree in accounting and finance, it means anything about accounting and finance, you should be a master of that. How many people do you know who have master's degrees? Some even have double, triple master's degrees, and they are master of none.
That's true.
You meet somebody. I met one gentleman like that years back. He says yes, he has a master's degree, master of science degree from a certain university. I won't mention the name, in Ghana. Master of science degree in accounting and finance. I said, okay. So what? Okay, so can you develop a spreadsheet financial model for a company and perform the analysis, simulation analysis, and scenarios analysis? Can you do Monte Carlo simulation?
That will mess him up.
That
will mess him up.
But he says a master of what? A master of nothing. I think that those guys in the academy must be serious and sit up. Because look, they are messing up and destroying the lives of precious human souls.
Yeah.